Got a Tennessee bluebird looking at me from behind this camera. Maybe he's a student of the visual arts. I don't know. Good morning. Well, faithful, we're back on the old Natchez Trace this morning. It is Tuesday, I think it's the 19th. I didn't misread my calendar, which means a week from Thursday is Thanksgiving in the United States. Fall is progressing. We may be a bit beyond the peak of the leaf change in this part of the world, Middle Tennessee, southern Middle Tennessee, but there's still some colors to be had, and sometimes the beauty's in the subtle nature of those colors. We're going to get out here at an overlook and see if there's any distance shots to be had involving subtle colors, undulations of the landscape, and maybe a water feature or an old dwelling. Let's take a look. This location is called the Water Valley Overlook, and I think I found a composition. The sun's there, roughly east. So we're looking northeast. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to put on the 120 macro lens. It offers a little more reach than the 62 millimeter I've got on there now. And I need to get past some power lines and a nearby shrub or tree line that's kind of in the way. I could probably crop it out, Photoshop, but I think this longer reach lens, even though it's a macro, it's longer. It's a 120 versus 62. That reach will give me a cleaner image. See what we get. And I believe I'm going to go ahead and put a polarizer on here. Since I'm shooting this way, the sun is right behind the camera, the vlogging camera. That'll give us a classic, perfect use for polarizing filter. I don't think I'm going to need a lens shade. We'll see. All right, focus is easy since the subject is an old barn and it's about a mile off or so, maybe a half a mile. So I'm going to polarize this and see if it makes any difference. I've got a little bit of sky showing, but I may or may not leave that in the crop because there's not much story up there. It's starting to flatten out. The clouds that were so interesting when I left the house about an hour and a half ago have pretty much dissipated to the north. Let's see. Well, that came up nicely when I polarized. It really saturated the colors that are there. Let's see what we see. Histogram shows I'm pretty close to right on with the exposure of f32 at 1/4 of a second, but I don't need all of that. Let's go to f11 and we'll change the shutter speed to 1/30th of a second, and I'm going to go ahead and attach the remote release because why not? It's just the thing to do. Okay, what do we got? We've got a 120 macro lens, ISO 100, f11, 1/30th of a second. 2-second delay on the shutter release. I don't see that getting much better than that. I'm going to just spin my point of view around a little bit to eliminate some foreground clutter and see if we can clean this up just a little bit. Nothing else will change. I think that pretty dang perfect right there. We're at another overlook. This is Baker Bluff Overlook, just still on the Natchez Trace. And the sun, for all intents and purposes, I guess you got a good look at the sun right then, is pretty much downrange from the way my camera is pointed. For what I'm getting from that point of view, it's a lot of silhouettes, not a lot of color, some color in the, I guess the field in the foreground, but mostly what I'm looking at is graphic shapes and tonalities. I do have a center of interest, the silo on the old farm in the far distance. Nothing to the sky. I'll probably crop it completely out of the picture because it's just featureless. And so I'm going to get 2 or 3 views from what we've got going on right here. For this overlook shot, I'm f/16 and 2/3, and the shutter speed I'm varying between an 1/8, a 15th, and a 30th, depending on how much chiaroscuro quality I want the scene to have. I think the next place we want to see is a place called Jackson Falls. I believe it's just right over the hill, down the trace just a little further. We visited that in the spring, and so now we're going to see how different it is in the fall, and maybe there'll be enough water coming over the falls to make for some graphic interest this time. Let's go look. We're about to get our workout here. We're going to walk it says 900 feet path down to Jackson Falls. Hopefully there'll be some things worth looking at, photographing on the way down, as well as when we get there, and then maybe on the way up too. The breakdown of the rocks here is, I guess, forming what might be considered natural steps, but you still got to watch where you put your foot, because it could get slick real quick. Not real sure about all this, but got kind of a tumble down thing going here. There's not much water coming over the falls, but it has a feel to it. I'm going to see if we can put something together here that is worth that rocky descent. If I get lucky, I can leave the camera bag where it is and climb back up the rocks without it and just pick it up on the way out. I'm going to start looking at this at the widest view of this particular lens, which is 32 millimeters, equivalent to what, 24 maybe on a full frame. I like that. I'm going to look at it a little wider before I commit. This is a 23 millimeter lens, and on this medium format it's what's maybe 16 millimeter equivalent. Pretty dang wide. Make sure I don't step off a precipice. Wow, the wide mammer jammer there. I think I like it. Gives me plenty of room to crop in if I need to isolate anything that may be an actual point of major interest. All right, we're going to stick with the wide guy. I'm probably going to put a I don't know, may or may not put on a 6-stop neutral density. Let's see what the light looks like. That may give us some motion in the water that we do have running. And unlike the other day at Edwin Warner, we have some relatively flat landscape here. I want to be about head height, I think, to ensure that I get a landing spot at the bottom of that initial falls. It turns into a second falls. So I'm thinking that much extension right there on the legs will do me pretty good initial placement. That is a wide mammer jammer. Let's just look at it vertically for giggles. I don't think I'll stay here, but we'll see. I don't know. The thing about this real wide lens is not much problem pulling all the depth of field that I'll need to pull. Vertical is a pretty nice composition. Doesn't sell as well as a horizontal on YouTube though, does it? It's nice. No sky to worry about. Let's see, at f/18 I've got everything from 7 feet to infinity in focus, and that would certainly cover what I want there. But I'm underexposed about 2.5 stops, so that probably means, well, let's see. If I go to at f/14, I'm at 1/4 of a second, which is not what I want. I want a little longer exposure than that. I'm going to break out the remote release. So let's get this to bulb and 32 and see what that yields. Everything in the world is going to be in focus. That's pretty close to right on. I want about 4 seconds at least on this water, so let's look at one at 4 seconds. That is bulb setting f/32. The ISO is 100. So 4 seconds, here we go, 2-second delay. And the handy counter on the back of the camera tells me 2, 3, 4. Should be a stop over what I had before. I like it. All right, I'm gonna shoot this. I'm gonna bracket around this exposure. Then I'm gonna shoot one vertically. Then I think we'll have what we need. Histogram looks great. Focus highlighting looks perfect, forward, aft, all the way through. Something like 4 feet to infinity. Gotta love that. Let's do this vertically, shall we? Let's take a picture now. Ooh, that was unintentional intentional camera movement. Gives me vertigo. I'm going to angle down to pick up a set of rocks that are cropped halfway through right now. I want to get to all those rocks. Excellent, excellent. Now, you're in the picture. It's part of your tripod leg is, so let's do this. Let's see if you're out of the frame now. God, gravity. Oh yeah. Here we go. This is 4. Actually, this is 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. I'm done. It's a wrap. I've made this point before, but you're climbing with this much ruck weight on your back. Going up, I found that it's advantageous to lean forward. Get that 40 plus pounds working for you instead of against you. That may be the hardest part of the whole day. Let's get her done. Wee doggies. That was so steep I had to change batteries in the vlog camera. Rough on everybody. Everything, I reckon. It's a very steep incline. Certainly steep. This is a little place called Jack's Branch. And I'm afraid the sun has gotten so intense we may not find anything worthy of our efforts. We're going to take a look around and see. There's a staircase made from natural materials leading down from the parking lot at Jack's Branch to the picnic area, or access to the branch itself, and got an interesting structure about it. See the way it's built and curves and carries on? I'm going to see if I can't get a photograph of that. Let's start by looking with the 32 to 64 zoom lens at its widest setting. I think I'm going to start there behind this camera and work my way around in an arc. And my plan is to let the steps themselves be sort of a leading line, and the only interest is a bright blue sky with nothing in it, but there's some interesting trees up there, some green pines or something like that against the bare branches of the deciduous trees and the sky. So we'll just work the scene, see what we can come up with. Because of the angle of the sun, I think it may be advantageous to try to use a CPL here. I'm at F13 here, and the scale on the camera tells me everything from 9 feet to infinity, just about. Let's see if we can make that happen. 10 feet to infinity is in focus, and that falls within the area that I need to be sharp. At F13 at a 30th of a second, I'm 2 stops underexposed according to this. Of course, I'm reading the sky a little bit in this, so I'm going to say I'm going to open this up the equivalent of 1 stop to 15th of a second, 2-second timer delay. That's pretty good. Shadows are a little bit blocked up. According to the histogram, I'm underexposed for the shadows. I'm going to go to an 1/8 of a second. That looks like I may have a chance of pulling the detail in the shadows there. I'm going to go to a 1/4 second. All right, that should give me enough exposures to be able to blend, if I need to get detail in the darks and the highlights. My histogram tells me I'm looking pretty good, so let's just move around and keep doing the same thing. A week from Monday, y'all might be on YouTube.
Oh, hey, YouTube, get me on.
Oh, look at my makeup.
Take a look at the bikes.
Let me get my makeup on.
Should I close the lid?
Yeah. No, we're good. This is documentation. It's the Ebony Ivory.
That's right.
Indian Motorcycle Club. Diversity is us.
We're the AARP.
So y'all responded to the mailers like I did. All right, guys.
Great.
Good meeting you.
Take care.
Same here.
Don't let the blue hairs kill you.
All right, guys.
Hey guys, thanks so much for joining me on another trip down the Natchez Trace. Had a big time. I hope you did. I think we got some pretty good photographs. As the day starts to wrap up, looks like our clouds are coming back. Wish I had them a couple of hours ago, but there'll be another time. If you like what you see, give me one of those. Afraid you're gonna miss something? You know, you ought to subscribe. Also be a couple of good ideas if you would share this content with people you kind of like. And I'd appreciate any comments that you have. Good, bad, ugly, whatever you got. I'll see you next week. I'm sorry, what? I beg your pardon? Don't you dare stare at me in that tone of voice. I can tell by the expression on your finger that you're not happy, but don't you dare. Don't you ever. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.